The exploration vessel Wandering Star moved slowly through the darkness of space near the terminus sector. It was not a large ship. In fact, by most standards across the galaxy, it was quite small. The human craft had a crew of only 15 people, and its mission was simple. Map the asteroid fields in the border regions and look for minerals that might be useful for trade. Captain Marcus Webb sat in his chair on the bridge, watching the stars slide past the viewing screen. He had made this journey dozens of times before. It was routine work, boring even, but someone had to do it. The terminus sector sat between human space and several other territories, and tensions had been growing lately. Nothing serious, just the usual posturing between empires. "Captain, we have company," said Lieutenant Sarah Park from her station. Her voice was calm but carried a note of concern. Webb leaned forward. "What kind of company?" "Big kind, sir. Reading multiple contacts. They're Haelor vessels, at least 20 of them. Cruiser class, maybe bigger." The captain's jaw tightened. The Haelor Empire was not known for their friendly behavior toward smaller species. They controlled over 400 star systems and considered themselves the rightful rulers of this entire region of space. Humanity, with its mere 12 colonized systems, was barely a footnote in their records. "Distance?" Webb asked, closing fast. "They'll be in weapons range in 3 minutes. Send a standard greeting on all frequencies. Let them know we're on a peaceful mapping mission in neutral space." Park's fingers danced across her console. "Message sent, sir." The bridge fell quiet as they waited. Webb drummed his fingers on the armrest of his chair. The Wandering Star had light defensive shields and exactly 0 weapons. It was a science vessel, not a warship. If the Haelor wanted trouble, there was not much his crew could do about it. Down in the medical bay, Dr. Sarah Chen was reviewing her supply inventory. She was older than most of the crew, in her 50s with gray starting to show in her black hair. This mission had been her idea. She wanted to study the unique bacterial life that grew in certain types of asteroids. Her daughter Maria sat across from her, helping organize medical supplies. "Mom, do you really think we'll find anything interesting out here?" Maria asked. She was 23, fresh out of university, and this was her first real expedition into deep space. Dr. Chen smiled. "That's the beauty of exploration, Maria. We never know until we look. Your father used to say that every rock in space has a story to tell. We just need to learn how to listen." Maria nodded, her expression growing sad. Ambassador David Chen had died 2 years ago, but his passion for peaceful exploration lived on in his wife and daughter. He had dedicated his life to building bridges between humanity and other species, always believing that understanding could prevent conflict. "Attention, human vessel," a voice crackled over the ship's communication system. It spoke in heavily accented Standard Galactic, the common language used for trade and diplomacy. "You are in Haelor-controlled space. You will power down your engines and prepare to be boarded." Captain Webb's eyes narrowed. "Lieutenant Park, check our navigation. Are we in their territory?" "Negative, sir. We're at least 20,000 kilometers inside the neutral zone." "They're wrong." Webb activated his transmitter.
"Haelor vessels, this is Captain Marcus Webb of the human
exploration ship Wandering Star. Our navigation shows we are in neutral space as defined by the Galactic Council Treaty of 2247. We are conducting peaceful scientific research. There is no need for hostility." There was a long pause. Webb hoped reason would prevail. The Haelor had a reputation for being aggressive, but they usually followed the Council's basic rules. Most of the time. "Human captain, you will comply or face consequences. Power down now." Webb felt his heart rate increase. This was not going according to any diplomatic protocol he knew. "Lieutenant, get me a priority channel to command. We need to report this." "Working on it, sir. The signal will take about 20 minutes to reach the nearest relay station. Send it anyway. Include our full logs and position." In the medical bay, Maria looked up as the ship's alert system chirped softly. "Mom, is something wrong?" Dr. Chen listened to the muffled announcements from the bridge. Her face went pale. "Maria, I need you to go to your quarters, now. But, now. Maria, please." The young woman saw the fear in her mother's eyes and nodded, quickly leaving the medical bay. Dr. Chen activated her own communication panel. "Bridge, this is Dr. Chen. What's happening?" "We have a situation with some Haelor ships, Doctor. Nothing to worry about. Just a misunderstanding." But Sarah Chen heard the tension in the captain's voice. She had been on enough missions to know when someone was lying to keep people calm. On the bridge, The Haelor ships moved into a surrounding formation. Webb watched them on the tactical display, his stomach sinking. This was a combat pattern, not an inspection approach. "Sir, they're powering weapons," Park reported, her voice tight. "All crew, this is the captain. Brace for possible." The Haelor admiral, sitting in his command throne aboard the flagship Dominant Will, was already bored with this encounter. The human ship was pathetic, barely worth his attention. These humans needed to learn their place in the galaxy. A warning shot would teach them proper respect. "Fire across their bow," he ordered, waving one of his forearms dismissively. "Make it close enough to scare them." The weapons officer hesitated. "Sir, at this range, if our calculations are off..." "Did I ask for your opinion?" "Fire." The Haelor warship's main plasma cannon charged and released. A bolt of superheated energy screamed across space, but the human ship, detecting the energy buildup, had automatically tried to move away. The evasive maneuver brought it directly into the path of what was supposed to be a near miss. The plasma bolt struck the wandering star amidships, tearing through the communication array and ripping open 2 decks. Alarms shrieked throughout the ship. The lights flickered and died, replaced by dim emergency lighting. "Damage report," Webb shouted, gripping his chair as the ship shuddered. "Communications are gone, sir. We've lost decks 4 and 5. Hull breach contained, but we have casualties. Medical bay reports 3 injured, 2 critical." Webb felt cold rage building in his chest. They had attacked a peaceful science vessel in neutral space. This was not a warning shot. This was an act of war. "Engineering, how's our drive?" "Still functional, sir, but we're running on backups." "I can give you maybe half speed." "Lieutenant Park, do we have any way to send a message?" "Negative, sir. Our entire long-range array is destroyed. We have short range only, maybe a few thousand kilometers at best." Webb made a decision. "Set course for the nearest neutral station. Best possible speed. And Park, use our short-range transmitter. Send everything we have about this incident on all frequencies. Someone out there needs to know what happened here." Park's fingers flew across her console. "Message sent, sir. If anyone's listening, they'll know the Haelor Empire just attacked an unarmed human ship without provocation." The wandering star turned painfully, like a wounded animal, and began limping away from the Haelor fleet. Behind them, the alien admiral watched with satisfaction. "Let them go," he said. "They've learned their lesson. Report this to command as a routine border enforcement action. The humans entered our space, we corrected them, case closed." His second-in-command shifted uneasily. "Sir, that ship was clearly in the neutral zone. And we did fire on an unarmed vessel. If the Council investigates, the Council won't care about 12 human systems challenging an empire of 400. This incident is already forgotten." But the Admiral was wrong. Across human space, relay stations were already receiving the wandering star's final transmission. The message was fragmentary, damaged by the blast, but clear enough. A human exploration vessel had been attacked without warning. 3 crew members were dead, and among the survivors, trapped in the damaged medical bay with her mother, was Maria Chen, daughter of Ambassador David Chen, one of humanity's most beloved diplomats. The message reached Earth's diplomatic corps first. Then it reached Earth's military command. And then it reached the colonies, where families waited for news of their loved ones in space. Captain Webb sat in his damaged ship, watching the Haelor vessels disappear from his sensors. He didn't know that his distress call had been received. He didn't know that even now across human civilization something was waking up, something that had been sleeping for 200 years. He only knew that the Haelor Empire had made a choice today, and somehow, he suspected, they would come to regret it. The Galactic Council chamber was a massive dome that floated in neutral space, equidistant from all member civilizations. Representatives from 47 different species gathered in their designated sections, their forms ranging from humanoid to completely alien. The chamber buzzed with conversation in dozens of languages, all automatically translated by the Council's advanced systems. Ambassador Kelvin of the Rixian Consortium tapped his datapad with one of his 3-fingered hands. Another human petition? What is it this time? Trade dispute? Mining rights? His aide shook her head, her scales rippling with concern. "No, Ambassador. This is different. They're invoking Article 7. Kelvin's eyes widened. Article 7 of the Sentient Species Accords was rarely used. It dealt with unprovoked military aggression against civilian targets. The last time someone had invoked it was 70 years ago, and it had resulted in economic sanctions that crippled an entire empire. Article 7. Against whom? The Haelor Empire, sir. Kelvin stood up straight. The Haelor were one of the most powerful entities in the Council. 400 systems, thousands of warships, and a reputation for crushing anyone who opposed them. The humans, by comparison, were barely noticeable. A young species with only 12 systems and a military that most considered a glorified security force. This should be interesting, Kelvin muttered. The council chamber's lights dimmed, and a holographic display appeared at the center. The human delegation walked in, but something was different. Usually, human representatives wore diplomatic robes and carried themselves with careful politeness. Today they wore military uniforms. General Amara Okoye stepped to the speaker's platform. She was a tall woman with dark skin and eyes that seemed to see right through people. She had served in the human military for 30 years, but the council had rarely seen her. Humans preferred to send their diplomats, not their soldiers. Honored council members, Okoye began, her voice clear and strong. 3 days ago, the Haelor Empire attacked an unarmed human exploration vessel in neutral space. They destroyed our communication systems, killed 3 crew members and injured 5 others. Among those aboard was Maria Chen, daughter of the late Ambassador David Chen. A murmur went through the chamber. Many council members had known David Chen. He had been a bridge builder, a man who believed in peace above all else. The irony was not lost on anyone. The Haelor admiral claimed our ship violated their territory. Our navigation logs prove otherwise. We were 20,000 kilometers inside the neutral zone, conducting legitimate scientific research. This was not a border dispute. This was an unprovoked attack on civilians. The Haelor representative, Admiral Krothos, stood in his section. His massive form towered over the human general. The humans exaggerate. A simple warning shot went astray. We have already offered compensation, 5,000 credits and a formal apology. This matter should be closed. Okoye's expression didn't change. 5,000 credits. For 3 lives. For an act of war against a peaceful vessel. She paused, letting the words sink in. The Haelor Empire believes this is adequate? Your species controls 12 systems, Krothos said with a dismissive wave of his arms. We control 400. You should be grateful we offer anything at all. Know your place, human. The chamber went quiet. It was one thing to be aggressive in private dealings, but insulting another species in the council chamber was considered deeply inappropriate. General Okoye smiled, but it was not a friendly expression. Know our place. Yes, I suppose it's time the galaxy knew exactly what our place is. She activated her datapad, and the holographic display changed. Images appeared floating in the air for all to see. Historical records, battle footage, weapon specifications. But these were not from recent years. They were old, from before humanity joined the galactic community. 200 years ago, humanity was a divided species. We had over 200 nations on our homeworld, and we were constantly at war with each other. We developed weapons that could destroy entire cities in seconds. We created diseases that could kill billions. We fought wars that lasted decades and consumed whole continents. The council members watched in growing horror as the images showed mushroom clouds rising over cities, trenches filled with bodies, machines of war that dwarfed anything they had seen from other species. We called it the Unification Wars, Okoye continued. It lasted 50 years and killed 2 billion people, 1/4 of our entire population. We nearly destroyed ourselves, but we learned something in those years of blood and fire. We learned how to fight, how to really fight. A counselor from the peaceful Delmar species raised a tentacle. But you stopped. You became peaceful. You've been model citizens of the galactic community for 2 centuries. Yes, Okoye agreed. We stopped because we chose to. Because we looked at what we had become and decided there had to be a better way. We put our weapons aside. We focused on diplomacy, on trade, on building instead of destroying. We thought the galaxy appreciated that choice. She turned to face the Haelor representative directly. But you see our peace as weakness. You see our small territory as insignificance. You believe you can attack our people without consequence because we only have 12 systems to your 400. That is correct, Krothos said arrogantly. What will you do, human? Declare war? Your tiny fleet against the might of the Haelor Empire? You would be crushed in days. Okoye's smile grew wider. Oh, Admiral, you misunderstand. We're not asking for permission. We're not here to debate. We invoked Article 7 to inform the Council of our response as required by the Accords. The decision has already been made. She pressed another button on her datapad. New images appeared, these ones current. Every human colony world was shown, and on each one something remarkable was happening. Civilians were reporting to military centers. Factories were retooling for war production. Orbital shipyards that had been building cargo vessels were now constructing warships. For 200 years, every human has been trained in basic military service, Okoye explained. We maintained this tradition not because we wanted war, but because we remembered what it cost us to achieve peace. We swore that if we ever needed to defend ourselves again, every citizen would know how. A display showed human population figures, 12 systems, but each one heavily populated, nearly 15 billion people total, and military records showed that 70% of adults had completed combat training. 15 billion humans, someone whispered in the council chamber, and most of them have military experience? When we joined the galactic community, Okoye said, we registered our 12 colony worlds and our exploration fleet. We never mentioned our militia system because it was never needed. Why worry our neighbors with tales of our martial past when we were committed to peace? She turned back to the council. But the Haelor Empire attacked our children. They killed our people. They struck an unarmed science vessel and then offered 5,000 credits as if that settled the matter. They believe we are weak because we choose diplomacy first. The general's voice dropped, becoming harder. Every human colony is now on war footing. Our shipyards are working around the clock. Our militia is activating, and I am here to tell you, this is your only warning. The Haelor Empire has 7 days to meet our terms. Terms? Krothos laughed. You dare make demands? You will. Surrender the admiral who gave the order to fire, Okoye interrupted. Pay full reparations to the families of the dead and injured. Cede 3 border systems as a buffer zone, and issue a formal apology. Broadcast across all Haelor territories acknowledging this unprovoked attack. The chamber erupted in chaos. The demands were harsh, almost insulting. No major empire would accept such terms. Krothos's face turned dark with rage. Never, you overreach, human. This is an insult to the Haelor Empire. You have 7 days, Okoye repeated calmly. After that, we come for what we're owed. You would attack us? With what? Your merchant fleet converted to warships? Your civilian militia? We have professional soldiers, trained from birth. We have weapons you cannot imagine. Your 12 systems cannot stand against our might. Okoye gathered her datapad and prepared to leave. Before she walked out, she turned back one final time. Admiral Krothos, you asked what we would do. Let me be clear. We've been practicing peace for 200 years. We're very good at it. But before that, we practiced war for 10,000 years, and we were the best in our galaxy at that too. She paused at the doorway. You attacked our daughter, Admiral. Now you're going to meet our mother. 7 days. The human delegation left the chamber. Silence fell over the council. Representatives looked at each other with growing concern. They had always seen humanity as the friendly species, the one that preferred trade over conflict, diplomacy over warfare. Ambassador Kelvin pulled up his datapad, accessing the historical records that Okoye had shared. He went deeper, finding classified reports that humanity had filed when first joining the council. Reports that most species had never bothered to read because humans seemed so harmless. His scales went pale as he read about the weapons humans had created. Nuclear bombs, biological warfare, chemical agents, kinetic bombardment, and that was just from their early history. What had they developed since then? May the stars have mercy, he whispered. We've been living next to a sleeping monster and the Haelor just woke it up. Across the chamber, other representatives were reaching the same conclusion. The friendly humans, the peaceful traders, the diplomatic bridge builders had a past soaked in blood. And they had chosen to leave that past behind, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. Until now. On the Haelor homeworld, Admiral Krothos received word of the human ultimatum. He laughed it off, dismissing it as the desperate bluster of a weak species. He ordered his fleets to their border with human space, confident that a show of force would bring the humans to their senses. He never considered that perhaps the humans had already thought this through. That perhaps they had spent 2 centuries preparing for the possibility of war, hoping it would never come but ready if it did. On Earth, General Okoye stood in the command center, surrounded by displays showing every human world. She had not wanted this. None of them had. But the choice had been taken from them the moment the Haelor fired on the wandering star. 7 days, she said to her staff. That's how long we give them to do the right thing. After that, we show the galaxy what humanity really is. An aide approached her hesitantly. General, what if they refuse? What if they actually force us to go to war? Okoy's expression was grim. Then the Haelor Empire is about to learn a very painful lesson. You don't attack humanity's children and walk away, not ever. Not when we're willing to burn ourselves down to make sure you burn with us. The countdown had begun. The 7 days passed. The Haelor Empire sent no response to humanity's demands. Admiral Krothos instead positioned 3,000 warships along the human border, the largest fleet deployment in recent galactic history. It was meant to intimidate, to show the humans the futility of resistance. Commander Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the human vessel Defiant, watching the Haelor fleet through her sensors. Her ship was one of 50 that humanity had sent to meet them. 50 ships against 3,000. The numbers looked impossible. They think we're insane, her tactical officer said, studying the enemy formation. Maybe we are, Vasquez replied. But we're not here to play by their rules. The Haelor had fought wars for centuries. They knew how galactic warfare worked. Fleets met in open space, formed battle lines, and exchanged fire until one side retreated or was destroyed. It was predictable, organized, and civilized by galactic standards. Humanity had studied these tactics carefully. Then they had decided to ignore them completely. All ships, Vasquez transmitted to the human fleet. Execute Pattern Omega, show them what chaos looks like. The human ships scattered. Instead of forming a defensive line, they broke in every direction, moving in patterns that seemed random but were actually carefully calculated. The Haelor fleet tried to target them, but the humans were using every trick they had learned from centuries of naval warfare on Earth. They called it Crazy Ivan maneuvers, named after submarine tactics from ancient Earth wars. Ships would suddenly reverse thrust, flip, and accelerate in completely unexpected directions. The Haelor targeting systems, designed for predictable fleet movements, struggled to keep up. Human ships are breaking formation, the Haelor tactical officer reported to Admiral Krothos. They're scattered across 3,000 kilometers. No pattern detected, Krothos frowned. This was not how space battles were fought. Destroy them. All ships fire at will. The Haelor warships opened fire, but the humans were already somewhere else. Plasma bolts and energy beams cut through empty space. When the Haelor tried to predict human movements, the humans would do something completely different. Then the humans began their counterattack. Small drones, each no bigger than a personal shuttle, shot out from the human ships. Thousands of them. The Haelor sensors tracked them, confused. These drones carried no meaningful weapons. What were they doing? The answer came seconds later. The drones were kamikaze weapons, programmed to ram into Haelor ships at relativistic speeds. Each one hit with the force of a small nuclear explosion. They targeted weak points, engine sections, sensor arrays, weapon ports. Shields holding, a Haelor captain reported. These attacks are ineffective, but that was not the point. The drones were not meant to destroy the Haelor ships. They were meant to blind them, to damage their sensors and targeting systems. And while the Haelor fleet was dealing with thousands of suicide drones, the human ships moved into position. Commander Vasquez watched her tactical display. The Haelor fleet was exactly where she wanted them. Bunched together, distracted, their sensors compromised by the drone attacks. Launch the packages, she ordered. From each human ship, large containers were ejected. They looked like cargo pods, completely harmless. The Haelor barely noticed them among all the chaos of battle. The containers drifted into the Haelor formation. Then they opened. Inside each container were hundreds of metal rods, each one 3 meters long and made of solid tungsten. They had no explosives, no energy weapons. They were just metal. But they did not need anything else. The human ships had launched these rods toward the Haelor fleet, and now they used precise bursts from small thrusters to aim them. The rods began to accelerate faster and faster, until they were moving at a significant fraction of light speed. When the first rod hit a Haelor cruiser, it punched straight through the shields. Shields were designed to stop energy weapons and explosive missiles, not solid metal moving at relativistic speeds. The rod tore through the ship from bow to stern, the kinetic energy vaporizing everything it touched. "What is this?" Admiral Krothos shouted as his fleet began taking casualties. "What kind of weapon is this?" They're called kinetic kill vehicles, his tactical officer reported, reading the data frantically. Simple metal projectiles accelerated to extreme velocities. Our shields cannot stop them. Then evade, move the fleet. But the Haelor fleet was too large, too slow. They had grouped together for maximum firepower, never expecting an attack like this. The metal rods kept coming, dozens of them, each one striking with devastating force. 3 Haelor ships were destroyed in the first minute, then 5 more. The proud fleet that had come to crush humanity was being torn apart by what amounted to thrown rocks. Just thrown very, very fast. Retreat, Krothos ordered. Fall back to the secondary position. But the humans had predicted this too. As the Haelor fleet began to withdraw, they found that human ships had somehow gotten behind them. Not many ships, just a handful, but they had cut off the retreat route, and those ships were not there to fight. They were there to launch mines. The mines floated in space, waiting. When the Haelor ships tried to pass, the mines detonated, not with explosions, but with electromagnetic pulses that fried electronic systems. Haelor ships went dark, their computers crashing, their weapons offline. They're everywhere, a Haelor captain screamed over the communication channel. How are they everywhere? The answer was simple. Humans did not fight like other galactic species. They did not believe in fair fights or honorable combat. They believed in winning, whatever it took. If that meant using suicide drones, kinetic weapons, EMP mines, and guerrilla tactics, then that was what they would do. Commander Vasquez watched the Haelor fleet break apart in confusion. Some ships tried to fight, others tried to flee, and none of them knew where the next attack would come from. Target their supply ships, she ordered. Leave the warships alone for now. Her crew looked at her in surprise. Ma'am, the warships are the threat. The warships can't fight without fuel and ammunition, Vasquez explained. Take out their supply line and they're just expensive debris waiting to happen. The human fleet changed targets. They ignored the Haelor battleships and cruisers, instead focusing on the support vessels hanging back from the main battle. These ships carried fuel, spare parts, food, and everything else a fleet needed to operate. The Haelor had never considered that anyone would target supply ships. It was not done. Logistics vessels were considered off-limits in civilized warfare, left alone by mutual agreement. But humans had no such agreement, and they saw those supply ships as the weakest point in the Haelor formation. Within an hour, every Haelor supply vessel was destroyed or disabled. The mighty fleet suddenly faced a choice: retreat immediately before they ran out of fuel or stay and fight on limited resources. Admiral Krothos made the only decision he could. Full retreat. Return to Haelor space immediately. The human ships did not pursue. They simply watched as 3,000 Haelor warships turned and fled from 50 human vessels. News of the battle spread across the galaxy within hours. The impossible had happened. The humans, outnumbered 60-1, had defeated a major Haelor fleet without losing a single ship. On the Galactic Council station, representatives gathered in emergency session. Ambassador Kelvin of the Rixian Consortium pulled up the battle footage, watching it again and again. They fight like prey animals cornered by predators, he said quietly. No rules, no honor, just pure survival instinct. They use everything they have, every dirty trick, every advantage. And it works, another counselor added. The Haelor never knew what hit them. Back on Earth, military historians were already analyzing the battle. They recognized the tactics immediately. Guerrilla warfare, asymmetric combat, denial of resources. These were strategies humanity had developed over thousands of years of fighting each other. We used to joke, one historian said during a news broadcast, that humanity's greatest weakness was that we could never agree on anything. We fought each other for every scrap of land, every resource, every idea, but that constant warfare taught us something. It taught us how to fight smart, not just strong. General Okoye stood in the command center, receiving reports from across human space. The victory at the border was just the beginning. Already, human ships were moving into Haelor territory, not in large fleets but in small groups. They hit supply depots, communication relays, and mining operations. They avoided major Haelor military bases and instead targeted everything that supported them. The Haelor still think this is a conventional war, she told her staff. They're waiting for us to mass our forces and attack their strongholds. They don't understand that we're never going to do that. What's our objective, General? An aide asked. We're going to make it impossible for them to wage war, Okoye replied. We're going to destroy their supply lines, cripple their economy. and make every Haelor system understand that attacking humanity comes with a price they can't afford to pay. In Haelor space, panic was spreading. Reports came in from dozens of systems. Human ships appeared from nowhere, struck their targets, and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. The Haelor military tried to respond, but they were always one step behind. A captured Haelor officer, picked up after his ship was disabled, was brought before human interrogators. He was treated well, given medical care and decent food, but he was clearly shaken by his experience. "You fight like demons," he said through a translator. "No honor, no mercy. You attack from the shadows and disappear. You target the weak and avoid the strong. This is not warfare. This is terrorism." The human interrogator, a young lieutenant, looked at him calmly. "We call it asymmetric warfare. When you're outnumbered and outgunned, you use every advantage you can find. You taught us this lesson when you attacked an unarmed science vessel. Did you think we would line up our ships and let you destroy them fairly? We expected you to surrender," the Haelor officer admitted. "Everyone surrenders to the Empire eventually." "Then you don't know humans very well," the lieutenant replied. "We have a saying. We'd rather die on our feet than live on our knees. Your empire made the mistake of thinking our peace meant we were weak. Now you're learning the difference." The Haelor officer slumped in his chair. "How do you fight against an enemy that refuses to fight fairly?" The lieutenant smiled sadly. "You don't. You surrender before they destroy everything you have. That's the lesson we're trying to teach your leaders." Across Haelor space, that lesson was starting to sink in. System after system sent secret messages to the central government, begging them to make peace with the humans. The cost of this war was becoming unbearable, and it had only been a few weeks. Admiral Krothos stood before the Haelor High Command, trying to explain how he had lost to such an inferior force. "They don't fight like civilized species," he said, his voice desperate. "They have no concept of proper military conduct. They use weapons we never considered, tactics we never prepared for. How do you defend against an enemy that attacks supply ships instead of warships, that uses simple metal rods as devastating weapons?" The High Command members looked at each other grimly. They were beginning to understand that they had made a terrible mistake. They had awakened something they did not understand, and now it was tearing their empire apart. And the humans were just getting started. The war had been going for 3 months when the first intelligence reports reached the other galactic powers. What they read made their leaders lose sleep. In the Rixian intelligence headquarters, Director Malvin stared at the data screens with growing horror. Her analysts had been digging into human history, going deeper than the surface information humanity had provided when joining the galactic community. "These cannot be real," she said, pointing at the display. "No species does this to themselves." Her chief analyst, a veteran with 30 years of experience, nodded grimly. "The records are verified, Director. Multiple independent sources. Earth's history is disturbing. The screen showed wars humanity had fought. The 100 Years' War, the 30 Years' War, 2 world wars that had engulfed their entire planet. Conflicts that lasted generations, where entire populations were mobilized for combat. They fought a war that killed 50 million of their own kind," Malvin whispered. "And then 20 years later, they did it again." "What kind of species keeps fighting like that?" "One that evolved on a death world," the analyst replied. "Look at Earth's ecosystem. 95% of all life forms there are hostile to humans. Predators, diseases, poisonous plants, extreme weather. They had to fight for survival from the moment they came down from the trees." Another screen showed human military innovations. They had invented flying machines and immediately weaponized them. They had split the atom and turned it into a bomb. They had gone to space and designed weapons that could strike from orbit. "Here is what concerns me most," the analyst continued, pulling up another file. "Humans have entertainment based on warfare. They create simulations where they practice killing each other, for fun." Malvin watched footage of human video games. Millions of humans spending their free time learning military tactics, practicing combat scenarios, studying historical battles. It was not training, not officially, but it had the same effect. They've been preparing for war while claiming to be peaceful, she realized. Every human who plays these games, who watches their war movies, who reads their military history, is unconsciously learning how to fight. And they have 15 billion people, the analyst added. Even if only a fraction of them join the military, that's still the largest potential army in the galaxy. Malvin made a decision. Send this to the Council immediately. Every species needs to see this. They need to understand what the Haelor have unleashed. The report spread through galactic intelligence agencies like wildfire. Leaders who had dismissed humanity as a minor power suddenly found themselves reassessing everything they thought they knew. On the water world of Aquara, the ruling council gathered in their floating city. They had always considered themselves sophisticated, their society built on philosophy and art rather than warfare. The humans, one counselor said, tentacles writhing in distress, have over 10,000 words in their languages just to describe different types of killing. They have studied warfare as an art form for their entire history. But they seemed so peaceful, another protested. They brought us music, literature, trade agreements. They never showed aggression, because they chose not to, the first counselor replied. That's what makes them terrifying. They have the capacity for extreme violence, but they control it, until someone pushes them too far. Similar conversations were happening across the galaxy. Species that had never worried about humanity were suddenly very concerned about having them as neighbors. In Haelor space, the situation was deteriorating rapidly. 47 systems had declared independence, unwilling to continue fighting a war they could not win. The Haelor military tried to hold the Empire together, but they were fighting two wars now, one against humanity and one against their own rebellious colonies. Governor Thalon of the Haelor colony world of Prixis stood before a crowd of citizens. His forearms were raised in a gesture of peace, but the people were angry. The humans have blockaded our supply routes, someone shouted from the crowd. We have no food shipments coming in. Our children are going hungry because the High Command refuses to surrender. The military says we must hold strong, Thalon tried to explain. That victory is near. Victory, another voice called out. The humans destroyed 3 more supply depots yesterday. They've crippled our orbital defenses without firing a shot at our cities. They could kill us all, but instead they're starving us out. This is not a war we can win. Thalon knew they were right. The humans had completely changed the nature of the conflict. They did not attack civilian populations. They did not bomb cities or slaughter innocents. Instead, they made it impossible for the Haelor military to function. They destroyed fuel depots, ammunition factories, and food storage facilities. They targeted everything that kept the war machine running. It was almost merciful, except that it was devastatingly effective. I am calling for a vote, Thalon announced. Should Prixis remain part of the Haelor Empire, or should we seek separate peace with humanity? The vote was overwhelming. Prixis became the 48th system to break away from the Empire. On Earth, General Okoye received daily reports of Haelor systems surrendering. Each one was treated the same way. Human ships would arrive, accept the surrender, and immediately begin providing humanitarian aid. Food, medicine, repair equipment, all the things the Haelor military had been unable to provide while fighting the war. We're spending more on aid than we are on weapons, one of Okoye's advisors pointed out. Good, she replied. We want the Haelor people to see that we're not their enemy. Their leadership is. Every system that surrenders is one less system we have to fight for. The Haelor High Command is calling it propaganda. Okoye smiled coldly. It is propaganda, the most effective kind, the truth. We could destroy their cities, but we don't. We could massacre their populations, but we won't. We're showing them that life is better without their empire's leadership. The psychological warfare was working. Every day, more Haelor citizens questioned why they were fighting. The humans had attacked an unarmed ship, yes, but the response from human military had been precise and controlled. They targeted only military and industrial sites. Civilian casualties from human actions were almost zero. Meanwhile, the Haelor military's own desperate attempts to stop the rebellion had caused thousands of civilian deaths. They had bombarded rebel colonies, executed deserters, and imposed harsh martial law. The Empire was destroying itself, trying to maintain control. In the Galactic Council, emergency sessions were held almost daily. The counselors watched in real time as a major galactic empire collapsed under the pressure of human warfare. We need to intervene, Ambassador Kelvin argued. This has gone far enough. The Haelor Empire is falling apart, and whose fault is that? The human representative asked calmly. They attacked our ship. They refused our terms. They declared they would crush us. Everything that has happened since is the consequence of their choices. But the humanitarian cost, is minimal thanks to our restraint, the human cut him off. We have killed fewer Haelor soldiers in 3 months than they kill each other in training accidents each year. We have destroyed their ability to wage war without massacring their population. If anything, we have been remarkably merciful. The council members could not argue with that. By galactic standards, humanity's warfare was almost gentle. They could have done so much worse. "What are your terms?" Kelvin asked. "What will it take for you to stop?" "The same terms we offered at the beginning," the human replied. "Surrender the admiral who gave the order to fire. Reparations for the victims. Territory as a buffer zone, and a formal apology. Nothing has changed." The Haelor will never agree. "Then they will continue to lose systems until there's nothing left of their empire," the human said simply. "The choice is theirs. It has always been theirs." On the Haelor homeworld, the High Command finally convened to discuss surrender. They had lost over 100 systems now. Their economy was in ruins. Their military was demoralized and deserting in large numbers. Admiral Krothos stood before them, no longer proud but broken. "I underestimated them," he admitted. "I thought their small territory meant they were weak. I did not understand that they chose to remain small not because they had to, but because they wanted to." "How could 12 systems defeat 400? One commander asked, still unable to comprehend it. "Because they were never fighting 400 systems," another replied. "They were fighting our leadership, our military structure, our entire way of thinking. And they knew exactly how to break it." A junior officer spoke up hesitantly. "I have studied their history, as they suggested. Do you know what frightens me most? This is not them at full strength. This is them holding back. They have weapons they have not used. Tactics they have not employed. They could have done so much worse." The room fell silent as that realization sank in. The humans had been restraining themselves. This controlled, precise warfare that was destroying the Empire was not their maximum effort. It was their minimum. They turned their greatest weakness into a strength, the officer continued. Their small size means they think like underdogs. They assume they will be outnumbered and outgunned, so they prepare for it. They train for it. Every human knows how to fight against superior odds because that's the only kind of fight they ever expect to have. Admiral Krothos looked at his fellow commanders. "The question is not whether we surrender. We have already lost. The question is how much more we destroy trying to pretend otherwise." The vote was taken. For the first time in Haelor history, the High Command voted to surrender unconditionally. General Okoye received the message while having coffee in her office. She read it twice to make sure she understood correctly. "They're surrendering," she told her staff. "Complete capitulation. They agreed to all our terms." There was no celebration, no cheering, just quiet satisfaction that the war was ending. "Prepare humanitarian aid packages for the Haelor homeworld," Okoye ordered. "They're going to need help rebuilding. And get me Ambassador Chen. We need someone who understands diplomacy to handle the next phase." Because the war was over, but the real work was just beginning. Humanity had proven they could break an empire. Now they needed to prove they could help rebuild one. A young lieutenant approached Okoye hesitantly. "General, the galaxy is afraid of us now. They've seen what we can do. They know about our history, our capacity for violence. How do we come back from that?" Okoye looked out the window at Earth, the blue-green world that had spawned such a paradoxical species. Capable of terrible destruction but choosing to build instead. Warriors who preferred peace. "We show them what we showed the Haelor," she said finally. "That we fight when we must, but we help when we can. That our strength is not in our weapons, but in our choice to use them only as a last resort. The galaxy feared the Haelor because they were strong. Let them fear us because we are strong enough to be merciful." The war was over. Humanity had won. But the real victory would be in what came next. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood in the grand hall of the Haelor throne world, the same planet from which an empire of 400 systems had once ruled. Now it was quiet, humbled, waiting to hear the terms of its defeat. She wore a simple diplomatic suit, not a military uniform. This was not a time for warriors. This was a time for builders. The Haelor High Council sat before her, their proud postures gone, replaced by the slumped shoulders of the defeated. Admiral Krothos was not among them. He had been handed over to human custody as required by the surrender terms, and now awaited trial for his attack on the Wandering Star. Ambassador Chen, the High Counselor spoke, his voice heavy with shame. "We are ready to hear your judgment," Sarah looked at them carefully. These beings had started a war over arrogance, over the belief that might made right. They had killed 3 humans, including people who were simply trying to explore the stars. And yet she felt no hatred, only sadness for the waste of it all. Before we discuss terms, Sarah said, I want you to understand something. The attack on the Wandering Star killed 3 people. One of them was Michael Torres, a father of 2 children who will never see him again. Another was Dr. James Okonkwo, who had dedicated his life to studying alien bacteria that might cure diseases. The third was Lieutenant Maria Lopez, who had just gotten engaged the week before. She paused, letting the names sink in. These were not statistics. These were real people with families, dreams, and futures that had been stolen from them. My daughter Maria survived the attack, Sarah continued. She was injured badly. She spent 2 weeks in medical care, wondering if she would ever walk again. She can walk now, but she has nightmares. She wakes up screaming, remembering the explosion, the fire, the moment she thought she was going to die. The Haelor counselors lowered their eyes. Some of them had children too. They understood what Sarah was describing. You need to understand this, Sarah said firmly, because we could have responded very differently. We could have come to your worlds and done the same thing to your families. We could have made your children wake up screaming. We could have left your cities in ruins and your people broken. Why did you not? The High Counselor asked quietly. You had the power. You defeated our military. You could have destroyed us completely. Sarah smiled sadly. Because 200 years ago we learned something important. We learned that power without wisdom leads only to more suffering. We nearly destroyed ourselves in our wars. We killed billions of our own people fighting over land, resources, and ideas. And when the last bomb fell and the last shot was fired, we looked at what we had done and asked ourselves, what was it all for? She walked slowly across the hall, her footsteps echoing in the silence. We discovered that winning a war means nothing if you lose yourself in the process. We could have exterminated you. We could have taken your worlds and enslaved your people. But then what? We would have become the very thing we fought against. We would have proven Admiral Krothos right that the only law in the galaxy is the law of force. But you did defeat us, another counselor said. You destroyed our military, collapsed our economy, broke our empire apart. How is that different from what we would have done? Because we did not kill your people, Sarah replied. Every action we took was designed to end your ability to make war, not to punish your civilians. We could have bombed your cities. We did not. We could have poisoned your water supplies. We did not. We could have done 1,000 terrible things, but we chose not to. She stopped in front of the High Counselor. Do you know why? Because we want you to rebuild. We want you to learn from this. We want you to become better, not bitter. The High Counselor looked up at her, confusion in his eyes. You want us to become better? After we attacked you? Yes, Sarah said simply. Because that is what civilization means. It means giving people the chance to grow, to change, to become more than what they were. If we simply destroyed everyone who wronged us, we would spend all our time destroying and none of our time building. She pulled out a data pad and projected the surrender terms into the air. The Haelor counselors read them carefully, expecting harsh demands that would cripple their society for generations. 50 years of demilitarization, the High Counselor read aloud. War reparations to the families of the deceased. 3 border systems transferred to human control as a buffer zone. Permanent human observers in your government. Admiral Krothos to face trial for war crimes. And a formal apology broadcast across all Haelor territories. He looked up at Sarah. These terms are surprisingly mild. We expected much worse. The reparations alone will take us decades to pay, another counselor pointed out. And 50 years without a military leaves us vulnerable to attack from other species. That is where the second part comes in, Sarah said, pulling up another document. Humanity will provide military protection for Haelor worlds during your demilitarization period. We will also offer economic assistance to help rebuild your damaged infrastructure, educational exchanges to help your people understand different perspectives, and technological sharing to improve your quality of life. The Haelor counselors stared at her in disbelief. You will protect us? The High Counselor asked. Why would you do that? Because, Sarah explained patiently, we do not want you to fail. We want you to succeed. We want you to become a society that values life, that resolves conflicts through dialogue instead of violence, that sees other species as partners instead of threats. But we attacked you. We killed your people. We declared war on you, Sarah nodded. Yes, you did. And you lost. But that does not mean we want to see you suffer forever. That does not mean we want your children to grow up in a broken society, hating humanity and waiting for revenge. We have seen that cycle before in our own history. It leads nowhere good. She gestured to the terms again. These conditions are designed to help you transform, not to punish you. The demilitarization gives your society time to focus on building instead of fighting. The observers ensure you stay on that path. The reparations acknowledge the harm done and provide justice for the victims. And our assistance helps you succeed in this transformation. What if we refuse? A younger counselor asked. What if we decide these terms are too humiliating to accept? Sarah's expression hardened slightly. Then we resume the war. And next time we will not be so restrained. We gave you a chance to surrender with dignity. If you throw that away, we will show you what total warfare really looks like. The threat hung in the air. The Haelor had seen what humanity could do while holding back. They did not want to see what humanity could do without restraint. We accept your terms, the High Counselor said quickly. All of them, Sarah nodded. Good. Then let us begin the work of peace. Over the following weeks, human aid ships arrived at Haelor worlds. They brought food, medicine, and construction equipment. Human engineers worked alongside Haelor workers to repair damaged infrastructure. Human doctors treated wounded Haelor civilians. Human teachers began exchange programs with Haelor schools. It was strange for both species at first. The Haelor had expected conquerors, not helpers. The humans had to overcome their own anger at the species that had attacked them. But slowly, carefully, they began to build something new. Maria Chen, still recovering from her injuries, volunteered to participate in one of the exchange programs. She traveled to a Haelor colony world to teach young Haelor about human culture and history. On her first day, a Haelor child raised their hand. Why did your people help us? We started the war. We hurt you. Why are you being kind? Maria thought about how to answer. She thought about the nightmares she still had. The fear she felt every time she heard a loud noise. The anger that sometimes consumed her when she thought about what had happened. Because, she said finally, being kind is harder than being cruel. It would be easy to hate you, easy to want revenge. But my father always said that the measure of a civilization is not how it treats its friends, but how it treats its enemies. We chose to be kind because that is who we want to be, not because it is easy, but because it is right. The Haelor child considered this. Your father sounds wise. He was, Maria said softly. He dedicated his life to building bridges between species. He believed that understanding and compassion could solve any problem. He died believing that. And I think he would be proud of what we are doing here. Back on Earth, Admiral Krothos stood trial for his crimes. The proceedings were fair, conducted according to galactic law, with Haelor advocates present to defend him. He was found guilty of attacking an unarmed civilian vessel and sentenced to 20 years of service in humanitarian work, helping to rebuild the communities his actions had damaged. It was not a harsh sentence by human standards. Humanity believed in rehabilitation, not just punishment. If Krothos could learn from his mistakes and become better, then his life still had value. In the Galactic Council, the human representative made a final statement about the war. Let this be a lesson to all species, she said. Humanity has the capacity for great violence. We nearly destroyed ourselves learning how to wage war, but we also learned how to make peace. We learned that true strength is not in your ability to destroy, but in your choice to build. We learned that the greatest victories are not won on battlefields, but in hearts and minds. She looked around the chamber at all the different species. The Haelor Empire made a mistake when they attacked our ship, but they are not beyond redemption. No one is. We offer the same choice to every species in this council. Work with us to build a better galaxy or stand aside. But do not attack us. Do not mistake our preference for peace as weakness. We will defend ourselves and our allies without hesitation, but we will also extend our hand in friendship to anyone willing to take it. The council members absorbed her words. The galaxy had changed. Humanity was no longer seen as a minor power, easily dismissed or threatened. They were recognized as what they truly were, a species of contradictions, capable of terrible warfare but choosing peaceful coexistence, small in territory but vast in potential. Ambassador Kelvan of the Rixian Consortium approached the human representative after the session. "Your species terrifies us," he admitted. "Not because of your weapons, but because of your choices. You could have destroyed the Haelor. Instead, you are helping them rebuild. You could have demanded tribute and submission. Instead, you offer partnership. We do not understand you." The human smiled. "That is because you are thinking like predators, like species that evolved with strength as their primary survival trait. We evolved as prey animals who learned to hunt. We know what it is like to be weak, to be afraid, to be hunted, and we remember. So when we have power, we try to use it differently than those who have always been strong." "And if the Haelor attack you again someday?" Kelvin asked. "What then?" "Then we will defeat them again," the human said simply. "But we will also offer them another chance to be better, and another after that, for as long as it takes, because that is what it means to be human. We never give up on people, even when they give up on themselves." Years later, the Galactic Council would update their records on humanity. The notation was simple but powerful. Status: protected species, do not engage. Humanity has demonstrated both the capacity for devastating military action and the wisdom to use it judiciously. They are the best friends you will ever have or the last mistake you will ever make. Choose wisely. And across the galaxy, a new saying emerged in many languages, translated from human philosophy. Humanity has two faces, the hand extended in friendship and the fist raised in defense. The Haelor Empire learned which face they chose, learned from their mistake. The war was over. The peace had begun. And the galaxy was learning that humanity's greatest strength was not their weapons or their tactics or their willingness to fight. It was their choice to forgive, to rebuild, and to believe that even former enemies could become future friends. That was the lesson of the Haelor War. That was the gift humanity offered to the galaxy. And that was why, in the end, they were not feared but respected. Not avoided but sought out. Not conquered but befriended. Because humanity remembered what it was like to be broken. And they dedicated themselves to healing instead of hurting, to building instead of destroying, to hope instead of hate. And that made all the difference.